She'll babysit the damn dog, or I'll handle it myself. That's what Patricia said. Cool as you please, fingers just ghosting over the lump in her purse like she was daring the world to test her. HOA policy, she said. Every household does their part. That's how it all started. Just another day in the madhouse we call Stone Glen, except this time, Patricia, the neighborhood's self-crowned queen of rules, pulled a gun on my daughter to make her babysit her yappy Pomeranian. What she didn't know? My daughter Kira is a 4-star general. Pentagon command. If I hadn't stepped between them, Patricia was about to learn what combat experience looks like up close. But let me back up a sec. Kira was barely back from deployment, still on medical leave, cane in one hand and a chip on her shoulder for anyone who dared look at her wrong. One more second, and Patricia would have found out the hard way that Kira wasn't just my daughter. She was a federal officer, and you don't threaten one of those, not even for dog duty. So I stood my ground. I didn't yell, didn't posture, just met Patricia's stare, like I'd done 1,000 times across government audit tables with everyone from nervous colonels to crooked contractors. That's not just my daughter, I said flat. That's General Kira Ellie. You just threatened a federal officer. Patricia blinked at me like I'd just spoken Martian. Excuse me. She huffed. HOA rules are HOA rules. Everyone does their part or pays the fine. Her eyes danced like she was expecting me to fold. Yours should be in the mailbox. So here's what I did. I stepped in, just enough to make her heels click back half a pace. Name Sam Ellery. I wrote half the compliance manuals the DoD still uses, spent 23 years catching internal fraud before it made the news, and this house. Been in my late wife's family since before Patricia's precious HOA even filed its first paperwork. She didn't flinch, not then, but her fingers twitched. Kira eased herself down on the garden bench, wincing as her hip locked. She really pulled that stunt. With a weapon? Over a Pomeranian? I nodded. She thinks she's untouchable. She's wrong, Kira muttered, her eyes narrowing at the garden. The garden her mother had planted during her last remission, all lavender and rosemary and little ceramic tags with her handwriting, the kind of place that makes you remember what peace smells like. Patricia hadn't just threatened Kira. She trespassed on the one spot that held our family together after cancer and deployment, and grief had torn it to pieces. So I didn't yell, didn't fight. I just made a call. You ever get that feeling, that electric surge, the second you finally stand up to a bully and realize you're not alone? Because that's what happened next. I pulled my old compliance field phone from the drawer, the one the DoD made us keep even after retirement, and started the wheels turning. Kira arched a brow. She recognized the ringtone that followed. You're escalating, she said. I'm reporting a federal threshold breach, I told her. That purse wasn't just a bluff, and this isn't just about you anymore. You see, Patricia's reign wasn't built on rules, it was built on control, on the fear that nobody would ever challenge her. The next morning, she tried to double down. Laminated notice on the community bulletin board, pet rotation duty compliance. Every homeowner now assigned to walk or care for approved pets or face $250 per day fines. Backdated, signed Patricia Breen, Vice President. She was rewriting history on the fly, trying to turn her stunt with Kira into official policy. That's when the neighbors started talking. Ron and Mariel from Unit 6, always first to show for bake sales, caught sight of the notice. She finally put it in writing, huh? Ron said. Mariel clutched her purse. She told me if I didn't walk her dog, I'd get flagged for non-participation. I showed them the picture I'd snapped of Patricia's hand hovering on the gun. She put it away fast, but Kira's active duty. That changes things. Their faces went stone cold. You going to report her? Already did, I said. And that's when I realized Patricia's power was never about rules. It was about everyone assuming nobody would challenge her. Then Omar, our former postal carrier, guys lived here since before the gates, limped over from the next mailbox cluster. You Sam, right? He asked. The one with a daughter in the military? I nodded. She tried the same thing on my niece. Made her clean up after her German shepherd when he got sick in the green space. Said it was her rotation. My niece cried for days. Kira's hand tightened on her cane. Tell her to keep that anger close, not loud. Just close, like kindling, Omar said. That night, Kira spread the HOA handbook out across the table. No mention of pet duty anywhere, but Patricia was twisting a miscellaneous compliance clause. I pulled up the county code, Regulation 37B. That clause, Only covers lawn mowing, not forced labor. She's cooked, Kira said. No, I replied. She's just smoking. Because here's the secret about compliance. It's not about being right. It's about having documentation that contradicts someone's abuse of power. The next day, things took a turn. Greg Vaughn, one of Patricia's bored lackeys, was standing in the community garden, staring at the lavender rose like he wished he were anywhere else. He looked like a man who'd made too many small compromises and was just starting to regret it. She told me to check the stone paths, he said, eyes down. Someone complained about a 3-inch rise violation. You mean the stones you walked on when you brought cookies after my wife's funeral? I shot back. Greg flinched. She's making us enforce things that aren't ratified, he said low. She calls them trial directives. Show force, they'll pass. That's not enforcement, I told him. That's coercion. Greg was stuck, caught between loyalty and what was right. I knew that look. I'd seen it 100 times before someone blew the whistle. That night, an anonymous envelope landed on my doorstep. Inside was a printed screenshot. Patricia's email to the board. If they push back, escalate consequences immediately. Fear maintains compliance. No name, but I knew who sent it. Greg was in. By Monday, the fine started. Rotational pet care noncompliance, $750, then $1,250, then more. All unsigned, all bluster. But that wasn't the worst part. By evening, neighbors began to slip notes under my door. Handwritten, some angry, some trembling. Patricia had turned the whole thing into a loyalty test. Refuse, get fined. Challenge her, get marked as problematic. That's when Kira, hunched over her laptop, said, she's filed 17 citations in 48 hours. All the same problem. No internal ratification, no legal cosign. None enforceable. But if people didn't know that, they might pay anyway. And then Patricia could argue that precedent had been set. That's how bullies work. They rely on people folding, one by one, until only the problem residents remain. A few days later, Greg finally cracked. He showed up late at night, sweat-soaked and wild-eyed, clutching a folder. Inside, memos, invoices, proof Patricia had spent HOA funds on spa days, pet grooming, and God knows what else. She told us to pre-approve those charges, he whispered, so she could bypass a vote. Why now? I asked. Greg ran a hand through his hair. The moment I saw your daughter standing on that porch looking like she was about to be ambushed in her own country, I realized what we'd become. I nodded. You just did the right thing. We built the case, page by page, thread by thread. By the time of the emergency town hall, called by Patricia, hoping to force through her pet duty policy with a show of hands, the air in the community center felt electric. Greg had handed out the timeline. Neighbors arrived early, murmurs rippling through the rows of folding chairs. Patricia swept in, heels clacking, flanked by hand-picked supporters. Kira sat front row, posture perfect. I waited in the second row, evidence in hand. Daniels, the DoD liaison, arrived just as the meeting began, civilian clothes, military posture, authorization letter in his pocket. Patricia tried to call the vote. I stood. Before any vote, the community has the right to review a procedural complaint filed with federal oversight. Daniels stepped forward. Per Department of Defense procedure, this HOA's authority is suspended pending audit. The room froze. Patricia tried to pivot, called it a vendetta, said Kira was hostile, accused us of theater. But then Kira spoke. Calm, even. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move. Not until you threatened me with your hand on a weapon. Gasps rippled. Daniels issued the audit order. Patricia tried to regain control, but her grip was gone. Neighbors stood, one by one. Ron, Mariel, Omar, all sharing what they'd endured, quietly, without drama. By the end, Patricia slunk out the side exit, leaving behind a stack of nullified fines and a board about to be dissolved. The new interim coordinator, Greg, by unanimous vote, apologized more times than I could count. The audit went through 79 pages of evidence, misappropriated funds, intimidation, fraud. Every illegal fine refunded, Patricia barred from ever holding office again. 2 weeks later, I sat on the garden bench, morning sun on my back, Kira working in the soil nearby. The lavender rose had bounced back, blooming bigger than ever. For the first time in months, neighbors waved when they passed. Kids played in the park. The only notices on the bulletin board were for a Sunday potluck and a park cleanup. Silence, when left unchecked, becomes permission. But today, the silence had been broken, replaced by the slow, steady rhythm of a neighborhood healing itself. Funny thing is, Patricia thought control was power. But the real power was everyone finally standing up, side by side. We didn't just win, we got our home back. And as the porch lights flickered on that night, one by one, I realized this wasn't just about my daughter or a garden or a Pomeranian. This was about drawing a line and daring anyone to cross it again. So what do you think? Where's the line between community and control? Drop a comment, share your story. Because somewhere out there, there's another Patricia and a neighborhood just waiting for someone to push back.